My name is Paige. I am 28 years old and work as a financial consultant in Chicago. Growing up in an upper middle class family in Connecticut, I never imagined I would have to fight so hard for financial stability. My parents had always promised to support my education, but they suddenly cut me off halfway through college without warning. The irony. Years later, after I had built my life from scratch, they expected me to empty my savings to bail out my irresponsible brother. Where are you watching from today? If my story of family betrayal and financial manipulation sounds familiar, hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to hear how I finally stood up for myself. I grew up in Westport, Connecticut, one of those picture-perfect New England towns where appearances matter more than reality. Our colonial-style house with its manicured lawn and seasonal decorations was my parents' pride and joy. Thomas and Eleanor Williams. My father and mother were obsessed with maintaining a certain image in our community. Dad worked as an investment banker, while Mom managed a high-end boutique in town. They both came from modest backgrounds and had worked hard to achieve upper-middle-class status, which perhaps explained their fixation on external validation. From an early age, it was clear that my younger brother Adam was the golden child. 3 years my junior, he had my father's charm and athletic ability qualities that were highly valued in our social circle. When Adam made the varsity football team as a freshman, my parents threw an elaborate party. When I made honor roll every semester, it was simply expected. Paige has always been our responsible one, my mother would say at social gatherings, as if reliability was somehow less impressive than Adam's sporadic achievements. Despite this obvious favoritism, I never doubted that my parents loved me. They had always promised that if I worked hard academically, they would support my college education completely. Your job is to focus on your studies and get into a good university, my father would say. We have been saving for your education since before you were born. I took them at their word and threw myself into academics, while Adam was allowed to focus on sports and social activities. I maintained a 4.0 GPA, served as editor of the school newspaper, and participated in academic competitions. By senior year, I had earned a reputation as one of the top students in our school. The pattern of my parents financially supporting Adam, despite his irresponsibility, began in high school. When Adam crashed the car he received for his 16th birthday, my parents immediately replaced it. When I asked for driving lessons at the same age, I was told to save up from my part-time library job. It builds character, Paige, my father explained. Adam is different. He needs more guidance. I did not question this logic at the time. Instead, I channeled my energy into securing my future. My hard work paid off when I was accepted to Northwestern University with a partial merit scholarship. My parents seemed genuinely proud hosting a dinner to celebrate my achievement. "We always knew you would make us proud, honey," my mother said, raising her glass in a toast. "Northwestern is expensive, but we have planned for this. Do not worry about the costs. Just focus on making the most of the opportunity." My first year at Northwestern was transformative. I thrived academically, made lifelong friends, and began to envision a career in finance. During holiday breaks, I noticed subtle signs that something might be amiss at home. My parents seemed tense when discussing finances, and there were comments about temporary setbacks in my father's investment portfolio. Still, they insisted everything was fine when I expressed concern. Adam, meanwhile, had barely graduated high school and was taking time off before college, which primarily consisted of playing video games and hanging out with friends. My parents framed this as him finding himself and continued to fund his lifestyle. Throughout freshman year, my parents faithfully deposited money into my account for tuition and living expenses as promised. I worked part-time at the university library for extra spending money, not because I needed to, but because I valued financial responsibility. I had no reason to believe anything would change. Looking back, there were warning signs I missed. The tension in my parents' voices when they discussed Adam's future, the new credit cards my mother began using, the postponed renovation of our kitchen. But I was 19, focused on my studies and my future, not yet attuned to the complexities of family financial dynamics that would soon upend my life. Summer break after freshman year passed uneventfully. I interned at a local bank in Connecticut, adding valuable experience to my resume. Adam had started talking about a business opportunity with friends, something about reselling limited edition sneakers. My parents seemed cautiously supportive, mentioning they might help him get started if he showed real commitment. I returned to Northwestern for sophomore year filled with optimism. My partial scholarship continued, and my parents had assured me they had transferred the fall semester tuition to my account. I had no reason to doubt them. After all, they had always kept their promises to me before. Little did I know that this sense of security was about to be shattered, teaching me one of the harshest lessons of my life. Sometimes those who are supposed to protect you are the ones who hurt you the most. The call came 3 weeks into my sophomore year on a Tuesday afternoon, as I walked across campus after my economics lecture. When I saw Mom flash across my phone screen, I answered with the casual ease of someone whose life was still secure. "Hey, Mom, what is up?" There was a pause, followed by my mother clearing her throat. "Paige, sweetie, your father and I need to talk to you about something important. Is this a good time?" The tension in her voice made my stomach clench. "Sure, what is going on?" My father's voice joined the call. "Paige, there is no easy way to say this. We cannot pay for your tuition this semester. We have had some significant investment losses, and we simply do not have the funds available right now." The world seemed to stop. Students streamed past me as I stood frozen on the walkway. "What? But the semester has already started. Tuition was due weeks ago." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "We know, honey. We are so sorry," my mother interjected. "We thought we could make it work, but things have gotten worse. We already spoke with the financial aid office. They know you will be coming in to discuss emergency options." The conversation that followed was a blur of apologies, vague explanations, and promises to figure something out for next semester. I ended the call in a state of shock, my mind racing with questions and fears. How would I stay in school? Where would I live if I could not pay for housing? Would I lose my scholarship if I had to withdraw? The next morning, I sat across from Ms. Winters in the financial aid office, my hands clutching a folder of documents I had frantically gathered overnight. "I do not understand," I said, fighting back tears. "My parents always promised they would cover my education. They never mentioned any financial problems until yesterday." Ms. Winters reviewed my file with a sympathetic but practical eye. "Unfortunately, this happens more often than you might think. Based on your parents' income, you would not qualify for need-based aid, but we can look at emergency loans and additional scholarship opportunities." What she said next made my blood run cold. "It is unusual that they paid for your first year without issues and then stopped so abruptly. Are you sure there have not been major changes in their financial situation?" That question led me down a rabbit hole of discovery. Through conversations with my mother's sister, Aunt Sarah, I learned the devastating truth: there had been no catastrophic investment losses. My parents had redirected the money they had promised for my education to fund Adam's new business venture, selling limited edition sneakers and streetwear. "Your brother convinced them it was a sure thing," Aunt Sarah explained during a hushed phone call. "They gave him nearly $40,000 to get started. I tried to talk them out of it, Paige, I really did." The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. While I had been working part-time for spending money and maintaining a 3.9 GPA, my parents had taken the funds promised to me and handed them to my brother for a business he had no experience or qualifications to run. With no other options, I threw myself into survival mode. I dropped my part-time library job and took on 3 higher-paying positions: morning shifts at a coffee shop near campus, evening work at a restaurant, and weekend hours doing administrative work for an insurance office. My course load remained full, because reducing credits would have meant losing my partial scholarship. The physical and emotional toll was immediate and severe. I slept 4 to 5 hours most nights, often studying between shifts or during breaks. Meals became whatever I could grab quickly or take home from the restaurant. Friends would find me asleep in the library textbook still open beside me. Professor Campbell, my microeconomics instructor, noticed the change. "You were my most engaged student, and now you can barely keep your eyes open in class," he said after asking me to stay behind one day. When I explained my situation, his face darkened with concern. "That is an impossible load, Paige. No one can maintain that pace for long without consequences." He was right, but I had no choice. I applied for every scholarship and emergency aid program available. The financial aid office helped me secure a small emergency loan, and I qualified for a work-study position that replaced one of my off-campus jobs. Still, the numbers barely added up, and the stress of financial precarity became my constant companion. The Christmas break after the financial cutoff was the most tension-filled family gathering I had ever experienced. I had planned to confront my parents about the truth of their decision, but I did not even need to bring it up. The evidence was displayed prominently in our living room, a framed photo of Adam standing proudly in front of his new sneaker shop in a small retail space in New Haven. "Isn't it wonderful?" my mother gushed when she caught me staring at the picture. "Adam is finally finding his path. The store has only been open 3 months, and he is already talking about expanding." I could not hold back any longer. "So this is what was more important than keeping your promise to me about college?" The room fell silent. My father's face hardened. "That is not fair, Paige. We are supporting both of our children as best we can." "You promised me," I said, my voice shaking. "I worked so hard because you said if I did, I would not have to worry about paying for college. I never would have chosen Northwestern if I knew I would be working 3 jobs to stay there." "Life is not always fair," my mother said dismissively. "Adam needed this opportunity, and you have always been more independent." The conversation devolved from there, with my parents positioning themselves as victims of circumstance, rather than acknowledging their choice to prioritize Adam's business venture over my education. By the end of the break, it was clear that no more help would be forthcoming, and that in their eyes, I was being unreasonable for expecting them to honor their promises. I returned to campus with a new hardness in my heart, but also a steely determination. If I could not count on my family, I would become completely self-sufficient. The trust that had been broken could never be fully repaired, but I refused to let their betrayal define my future or limit my potential. Little did I know that this painful lesson in self-reliance was just the beginning of a journey that would eventually lead me to an even more difficult family confrontation years later. The next 2 years of college became a masterclass in extreme financial discipline and exhausting hard work. Every dollar I earned was meticulously tracked and allocated, every expense questioned and often eliminated. I became an expert at finding free food events on campus, timing my grocery shopping for maximum discounts, and extending the life of everything I owned. My apartment, shared with 3 other students to minimize rent, was furnished entirely with secondhand items. I learned to repair my own clothes, cut my own hair, and prepare meals that cost less than $2 per serving. Coffee shop visits, movie nights, and new clothes became luxuries I could rarely afford. What began as financial necessity evolved into valuable life skills. I started reading personal finance books borrowed from the library, learning about budgeting, investing, and credit management. The abstract concepts from my business classes took on urgent practical relevance in my daily life. During this time, I met someone who would change the trajectory of my career. Professor James Sullivan taught an elective course on personal financial management that I had squeezed into my schedule. After class one evening, he asked about my unusual level of engagement with the material. "Most students your age are theoretically interested in finance, but lack practical experience," he said. "You ask questions like someone who is living these challenges." When I explained my situation instead of pity, he offered practical guidance. Professor Sullivan became my mentor, helping me navigate not just academic finance, but real-world financial strategies. He introduced me to resources for first-generation college students, though technically I was not one because my situation mirrored their challenges. "Financial independence is being forced on you earlier than most," he told me. "It is unfair, but if you can master these skills now, they will serve you for life." With his guidance, I refined my budget system, opened a Roth IRA with small monthly contributions, and developed strategies to build credit responsibly. More importantly, he helped me see my situation not just as a burden, but as specialized knowledge few of my peers possessed. Despite working 30-plus hours weekly, I maintained a 3.7 GPA and graduated with honors. The contrast between my graduation circumstances and what I had expected when entering college could not have been starker. Instead of celebrating with my family at a restaurant they would have paid for, I hosted a small gathering at my apartment for the friends who had become my support system. My parents and Adam attended the graduation ceremony, but seemed almost uncomfortable with my achievement, perhaps because it highlighted their absence from the journey. They gave me a card with $300, ironically, about the same amount I had spent on books that semester alone. "We are proud of you for making it work," my father said, as if my financial independence had been a character-building exercise they had intentionally designed, rather than a betrayal of their promises. Thanks to an internship Professor Sullivan had helped me secure during my junior year, I received a job offer from Meridian Financial Group 2 weeks before graduation. The entry-level position as a financial analyst paid less than I had hoped, but offered excellent benefits and growth potential. My early career was marked by the same disciplined approach that had gotten me through college. I lived well below my means, continued my frugal habits even as my income increased, and focused on paying off my student loans as quickly as possible. Every promotion and salary increase went primarily to debt reduction and building my emergency fund. Within 3 years, I had paid off all educational debt, saved 6 months of living expenses, and begun more significant retirement contributions. My colleagues often commented on my unusual financial discipline for someone in her 20s. "Do you ever have any fun with your money?" my coworker Jessica once asked after I declined another expensive happy hour. The truth was that financial security had become more than a goal. It was the foundation of my sense of safety. The trauma of having support suddenly withdrawn had left its mark, and I was determined never to be vulnerable in that way again. During these years, I built a network of friends who became the family I chose. Allison, my roommate from junior year, remained my closest friend. Marcus, whom I had met through a financial literacy volunteer program, became another trusted confidant. These relationships, built on mutual support and respect, contrasted sharply with my biological family dynamics. My contact with my parents and Adam dwindled to occasional phone calls and obligatory holiday visits. During these interactions, the pattern continued. Adam's various business ventures, none as successful as the original sneaker store, remained the primary focus of my parents' attention and resources. "Adam is expanding into online sales," my mother would announce proudly during our brief calls, never asking about my promotions or achievements unless I volunteered the information. When I moved into my first solo apartment in Chicago's Wicker Park neighborhood, the moment carried enormous emotional significance. Standing in the empty living room after signing the lease, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and self-sufficiency. This modest one-bedroom apartment represented something profound space that was entirely mine, secured through my own efforts without dependence on anyone who might withdraw support at a crucial moment. I took a photo of my key and new address and nearly sent it to my parents before deciding against it. This milestone belonged to me alone. As I established my independence, there were occasional hints that my parents continued to enable Adam's poor financial choices. Aunt Sarah mentioned a second mortgage on my parents' house, coinciding with Adam's latest business idea. My father referenced postponing retirement for a few more years, despite previous plans to stop working at 60. I noted these comments but maintained emotional distance. Their financial decisions were their own, just as mine had become mine by necessity. What I could not have anticipated was how dramatically these separate paths would collide, forcing me to confront both my family's dysfunction and my own unhealed wounds from the past. The call from my mother came on a Tuesday evening in April, almost exactly 3 years after my graduation. I was reviewing client portfolios in my apartment, Jazz, playing softly in the background, when her name appeared on my phone screen. Our communications had become perfunctory and infrequent, so an unexpected call triggered immediate concern. "Mom, is everything okay?" Her voice sounded strained. "Paige, we need your help. There is a family situation." My mother proceeded to explain in vague terms that Adam was in trouble and that they needed to discuss it in person. Despite my questions, she refused to provide details over the phone, insisting that I come to Connecticut that weekend. Against my better judgment, I booked a flight to Hartford for Friday evening. The familiar drive from the airport to my childhood home was filled with apprehension. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed that the house looked neglected. the garden overgrown, the paint beginning to peel, so unlike the meticulously maintained home of my youth. My parents greeted me with tense hugs, and I was surprised to see how much they had aged. My father's hair had gone completely gray, and my mother's perpetually perfect appearance had given way to minimal makeup and simple clothing. "Where is Adam?" I asked after the awkward greetings. "He will be here tomorrow," my father replied. "We wanted to talk to you first." Over dinner, the true purpose of the summons emerged. Adam had accumulated massive gambling debts over $100,000 and was facing threats from creditors and possible legal consequences for some related financial improprieties. "It started with sports betting," my father explained, staring into his barely touched plate of food. "Then casino games. He kept saying he was about to win big and pay everything back." "We have done everything we can," my mother added. "We have already used our retirement savings and taken a second mortgage on the house." I listened in growing disbelief as they detailed the extent of their financial sacrifice for Adam. They had depleted their 401(k)s, incurring substantial tax penalties. They had maxed out credit cards. My father had postponed retirement indefinitely. "And what exactly do you expect me to do about this?" I finally asked, though I already knew the answer. My father looked up, his expression a mix of desperation and entitlement. "We know you have been doing well at your job, Paige. We need $70,000 to settle the most pressing debts and legal issues. We would not ask if there were any other way." The audacity of the request left me momentarily speechless. $70,000 represented the majority of my carefully accumulated savings money, set aside for my future home purchase and additional retirement investments. "You cut me off in the middle of college without warning," I said slowly, "forcing me to work 3 jobs while maintaining a full course load. You gave Adam $40,000 for a business with no plan, and now you expect me to give him $70,000 with no guarantee he will not gamble that away too." "Family helps family," my mother said, employing the guilt that had always been her most effective tool. "You have always been the responsible one, Paige. Adam is in real trouble this time." I insisted on waiting until Adam was present before discussing it further. That night in my childhood bedroom, I could barely sleep, as memories of financial struggle and betrayal mingled with the current absurd request. The following day, Adam arrived for what became one of the most tense family gatherings I had ever experienced. At 31, my brother looked simultaneously older and less mature than his age would suggest. His designer clothes contrasted with the dark circles under his eyes and the nervous energy that seemed to radiate from him. "Hey, sis," he said with forced casualness. "Long time no see." The family meeting that followed revealed even more than my parents had initially disclosed. Adam's gambling problem had begun years earlier, and this was not the first time he had accumulated significant debt. My parents had bailed him out twice before with smaller but still substantial amounts. "I am getting help this time," Adam insisted. "I have joined Gamblers Anonymous and I am working with a therapist." When I asked how long he had been attending meetings, he admitted it had been only 2 weeks, coinciding with when my parents had likely agreed to approach me for money. The conversation grew heated when I requested details about exactly how the money would be used. "You do not trust me?" Adam asked, offended. "I have no reason to," I replied honestly. "Show me the debt documentation. Show me the legal papers. Show me the treatment plan." My father intervened. "Paige, this hostility is not helpful. Your brother is struggling." That is when the most shocking statement of the day emerged. My father, looking at me with genuine bewilderment, said, "After everything we have done for you, I cannot believe you would hesitate to help your brother in his time of need." The room seemed to tilt around me. "Everything you have done for me," I repeated, unable to mask my incredulity. "We gave you a stable home, a good upbringing, opportunities," my mother said. "And then you broke your promise and cut me off when I needed you most," I countered. "I built my financial stability despite you, not because of you." Adam, perhaps sensing an opportunity to divert attention from his issues, jumped in. "Not everyone had your natural advantages, Paige. Some of us struggle more." That was my breaking point. Years of suppressed resentment and pain boiled over as I laid out exactly what my natural advantages had cost me: endless working hours, physical exhaustion, deferred dreams, and the crushing weight of financial insecurity at an age when I should have been focused on education. I was lucky to graduate at all, I said, my voice rising despite attempts to stay calm. I lived on ramen and coffee for 2 years while working 30 hours a week. Meanwhile, Adam was getting tens of thousands for businesses that failed and gambling habits you enabled. My mother began to cry. My father's face turned stony, and Adam stormed out of the room. The family dinner dissolved into separate retreats with no resolution, and the request for money still hanging in the air. As I drove back to my hotel that night, having decided against staying in my childhood home, I felt the weight of family expectation crushing against my hard-won boundaries. The most painful realization was that nothing had changed. Despite years of evidence, my parents still saw Adam as deserving of unlimited support, while viewing my success as reason to treat me as a resource rather than a daughter who had once needed them too. I barely slept that night in the hotel, my mind racing with memories, anger, and conflicted emotions. By morning, I knew I needed professional guidance to navigate this family crisis without sacrificing my own well-being. Dr. Elena Martinez had been my therapist since I moved to Chicago, helping me process the lingering effects of my parents' financial abandonment. I called her office as soon as it opened and was grateful when she offered a phone session during her lunch break. "This is not just about money, Paige," Dr. Martinez said after listening to the details of the family confrontation. "This is about patterns of favoritism, enabling, and boundary violations that have been present throughout your relationship with your family." "But should I help Adam?" I asked, still torn despite my anger. "He might face legal consequences." "The question is not whether you should help, but what kind of help would be genuinely beneficial versus continuing harmful patterns," she replied. "Healthy boundaries are not selfish, they are necessary for authentic relationships." Our conversation clarified something important. I needed more information before making any decision. The vagueness of my family's claims triggered my suspicion, especially given their history of manipulation. After the call with Dr. Martinez, I began researching Adam's actual situation. I contacted an attorney friend for general advice about gambling debts and legal consequences. I searched public records for any filed cases involving my brother. Most importantly, I called Aunt Sarah, who had always been more forthright about family matters. "I was wondering when you would reach out," Aunt Sarah said when I explained the situation. "There is more to this than they are telling you, Paige." The conversation that followed revealed disturbing details my parents had omitted. Adam's gambling had led him to borrow money from some dangerous people. He had also committed fraud by using my parents' identities to open credit accounts. The legal issues were not just potential, but actual, with a court date already set for charges related to the fraud. "Your parents have been hiding the extent of their enabling for years," Aunt Sarah explained. "They remortgaged the house twice, not once. Your father's health has suffered from the stress, but he refuses to acknowledge it." Armed with this new information, I spent the day preparing for a second family meeting. I organized documentation, researched addiction recovery resources, and consulted with a financial advisor colleague about debt resolution options that would not involve me simply handing over my savings. When I arrived at my parents' house the next day, I was calm, prepared, and resolute. I had brought printed materials, including information on gambling addiction treatment programs, structured debt repayment options, and legal aid resources. Before we discuss anything, I began once everyone was seated in the living room. "I need to be clear that I am aware of the full situation, including the identity fraud and the dangerous lenders." The shock on their faces confirmed that they had intended to continue concealing these details. "How did you—" my father started. "It does not matter how I know," I replied. "What matters is that you asked me to commit a significant portion of my savings without being honest about the situation." I then presented the documentation I had compiled, laying out a clear picture of the pattern of financial favoritism and enabling that had characterized our family dynamics for years. I had created a timeline showing the parallel tracks of my financial abandonment during college and the escalating financial support Adam had received during and after that same period. This is not about punishing Adam or refusing to help, I explained. This is about acknowledging the truth of our family's patterns and making decisions that actually help rather than perpetuate harmful cycles. Adam, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly became defensive. So you are just going to lecture us instead of helping real nice Paige? I am offering a different kind of help, I countered. I have researched residential treatment programs for gambling addiction that have much higher success rates than outpatient therapy alone. I have found legal resources that specialize in gambling-related cases. What I will not do is simply hand over money that disappears into the same broken system. My mother, who had been quietly crying, looked up. But the immediate debt's the dangerous people he owes money to. There are structured ways to address that without enabling more gambling, I explained. But I need to see genuine commitment to change before I consider any financial involvement. That is when I delivered the speech that had been building in me for years, words I had rehearsed alone in my apartment in therapy sessions and in countless imagined confrontations. When you cut me off during college, I learned that I could only rely on myself. I worked impossibly hard to graduate to build a career to create financial security that no one could suddenly withdraw. I earned every dollar I have through sacrifice and discipline, after being abandoned by the very people who had promised to support me. I will not throw that hard-won stability into the same pattern that created this crisis in the first place. The silence that followed was profound. For perhaps the first time, my parents seemed to truly hear me. My father eventually spoke, his voice different than I had ever heard it. "What are you proposing instead, Paige?" I outlined a conditional plan I would help pay for a reputable residential treatment program for Adam's gambling addiction if he committed to completing it. I would connect them with a legitimate debt counseling service for the non-dangerous debts. For the threatening creditors, I would consider a loan, not a gift, with legal documentation and strict conditions. And there is something else, I added. I need acknowledgement of what happened to me. Not excuses, not justifications, but genuine recognition of the harm that was done when you broke your promise and cut me off. My parents exchanged glances, and then my mother said the words I had never expected to hear. "We were wrong, Paige. We should never have done that to you." The admission was so simple yet so profound that I found myself momentarily speechless. Adam, perhaps sensing the shifting dynamic, attempted to reassert control. "So you will help with the dangerous debt. Now I need to make some calls today." "No," I said firmly. "First you check into treatment. Then we address the debts with proper legal guidance. That is my offer." My parents looked torn, clearly accustomed to giving in to Adam's immediate demands. But something had changed in the room, a realization perhaps that the old patterns had led them to the brink of financial ruin. "She is right," my father finally said to Adam. "This cannot continue. We cannot continue this way." Adam stormed out again, slamming the door behind him. My parents looked defeated, but I saw something else too, a glimmer of recognition that boundaries might actually be necessary. As I drove away from my childhood home that evening, the parallels between this moment and my drive back to campus after being financially cut off were not lost on me. But this time, I was not the one who had been abandoned. I was the one who had set a boundary, offered conditional help based on responsibility rather than enabling, and finally spoken my truth after years of silence. I knew the road ahead would not be easy. Adam might reject treatment. My parents might revert to old patterns. The family fracture might widen before it began to heal. But for the first time since that devastating phone call in my sophomore year, I felt a sense of closure beginning to form. I had come full circle facing the same family dynamics, but now with the strength and clarity to chart a different path forward. In the weeks that followed the confrontation, a complex series of events unfolded. Adam initially refused the conditions of my help, convinced he could solve his problems independently or find another source of funds. My parents, however, seemed to have reached a turning point in their enabling behavior. "We have nothing left to give," my father admitted during a phone call 3 days after I returned to Chicago. "Your mother and I have been talking, and we realize we cannot continue down this path." Adam's situation grew more desperate as the dangerous creditors increased their pressure, and his court date for the fraud charges approached. 10 days after our confrontation, he called me directly, something he rarely did. "I will do the treatment program," he said without preamble. "Not because anyone is forcing me, but because I hit rock bottom yesterday and realized I cannot fix this alone." True to my word, I arranged and paid for him to enter Lakeside Recovery Center, a respected residential facility specializing in gambling addiction. The program required a 90-day commitment followed by intensive outpatient support and regular Gamblers Anonymous meetings. For the dangerous debts, I worked with an attorney to create a structured payment plan with the funds going through legal channels rather than directly to Adam or the creditors. The arrangement included strict conditions and verification procedures to ensure the money resolved the specific dangerous situation without enabling further gambling. As for my parents, our relationship entered new territory. For the first time, they began to acknowledge the disparate treatment between their children and the damage it had caused. "We never meant to hurt you," my mother said during a difficult but honest conversation. "We thought you were strong enough to handle it, while Adam always seemed to need more support. We see now how unfair that was." These words did not instantly heal years of hurt, but they opened a door to a more authentic relationship. I maintained clear boundaries while engaging in this tentative reconciliation, protecting myself from potential future disappointments while remaining open to genuine change. The aftermath period was professionally productive for me. I channeled my energy into my career, earning a significant promotion at Meridian Financial. I began specializing in financial counseling for young adults, drawing on my personal experience to help others navigate complex family financial dynamics. 6 months after our confrontation, I received an unexpected email from Adam. He had completed the residential program and was continuing with outpatient treatment and regular GA meetings. He asked if we could meet for coffee during my next visit to Connecticut. I approached this meeting with caution but also hope. At a quiet cafe in our hometown, I barely recognized the brother who sat across from me. The designer clothes and artificial confidence were gone, replaced by simple attire and a humble demeanor I had never associated with Adam. "I need to thank you," he began after we ordered our drinks. "Not just for the treatment program, but for being the only person who refused to enable me. Everyone else gave me what I thought I wanted, but you gave me what I needed." For the next hour, Adam spoke with a self-awareness I had never witnessed in him before. He acknowledged the favoritism that had shaped our childhood, taking responsibility for how he had exploited it, without considering its impact on me. "I never thought about what it cost you when they cut you off," he admitted. "I was so caught up in my own needs that I never questioned where the money for my business came from." Adam had begun working at a local hardware store, a humble job compared to his previous entrepreneurial ambitions, but one that provided structure and legitimate income. He had also started a small peer support group for young men struggling with gambling addiction. "I cannot change the past," he said toward the end of our conversation, "but I am trying to build a different kind of future one day at a time." I offered what I could: cautious emotional support and a willingness to rebuild our sibling relationship on new, healthier terms. Financial support remained off the table, except for his continuing recovery programs, a boundary he now seemed to respect and even appreciate. My parents continued their efforts to make amends, though old patterns occasionally resurfaced. When they suggested hosting a family holiday gathering, like we used to, I gently declined, choosing instead to spend Thanksgiving with my chosen family of friends in Chicago. "I need more time," I explained to my mother. "I value the steps we are taking, but healing happens at its own pace." What surprised me most during this period was how my personal experience began informing my professional life in unexpected ways. Clients facing family financial conflicts responded to my insights in ways they might not have to conventional financial advice alone. My manager noticed this specialization developing and encouraged me to create a workshop series on family financial dynamics and boundary setting. "You have turned a painful personal history into valuable professional expertise," he commented after sitting in on one of my presentations. As my reputation in this niche area grew, I received an invitation to speak at a financial literacy conference for college students. Standing at the podium, looking out at young faces who reminded me of myself 10 years earlier, I shared a carefully edited version of my story, along with practical advice for navigating family financial relationships. Financial boundaries are not just about money, I told the audience. They are about self-respect, clear communication, and sustainable support systems. The response was overwhelming. Students lined up afterward to share their own experiences with family financial conflicts and to ask for guidance. In these conversations, I realized that what had once been my most painful experience had indeed become valuable wisdom I could offer others. Meanwhile, my parents faced their own reckoning. With retirement funds depleted and their home equity largely gone, they were confronting serious financial insecurity in their 60s. Though part of me felt they were facing the natural consequences of their choices, I found myself gradually softening as they demonstrated genuine remorse and made efforts to rebuild our relationship. When my father experienced health problems that affected his ability to work, I helped them connect with financial advisors, specializing in retirement crisis management. I did not offer direct financial support maintaining that boundary, but I did provide the professional guidance they desperately needed. I understand now why you needed those boundaries, my father said during a hospital visit after his minor heart procedure. Sometimes helping means not giving what is asked for, but what is truly needed. Those words coming from the man who had once accused me of selfishness for not emptying my savings for my brother marked how far we had all traveled from that tense confrontation in their living room. As the 1-year anniversary of the family crisis approached, I found myself in a life I could never have imagined during those desperate days of working 3 jobs to stay in college. I had turned painful experience into professional expertise. I had maintained boundaries while opening myself to authentic reconciliation. I had helped my brother find true recovery rather than temporary financial rescue. Most importantly, I had come to understand that family can be redefined through actions, rather than simply blood. That support means encouraging growth, rather than enabling dysfunction, and that the painful lessons of being cut off had ultimately given me the strength to stand on my own and the wisdom to help others do the same. It has been exactly 1 year since the day my parents asked me to empty my savings to bail out my brother. In that year, I have experienced more personal and professional growth than in the previous 3 combined, as if the confrontation unlocked something that had been trapped within me. The most significant development has been the launch of my own financial consulting practice. After 7 years at Meridian Financial, I took the leap into entrepreneurship, creating Williams Financial Resilience, a consultancy focused specifically on helping young adults navigate complex financial relationships and build true independence. My client base includes recent graduates, young professionals, and individuals from high-conflict family financial backgrounds. Many come to me after experiencing situations similar to my own promised support, withdrawn financial manipulation from family members, or the need to establish healthy money boundaries with loved ones. You speak a language other financial advisors do not, one client told me recently. You understand that money in families is never just about dollars and cents. The healing process has continued, supported by therapy friends, and the perspective that comes from helping others through similar struggles. Dr. Martinez and I still meet monthly, our sessions now focusing more on maintaining healthy boundaries than processing old wounds. Notice how your language has changed, she pointed out during a recent session. You no longer say you were cut off, but that you became financially independent earlier than expected. That reframing reflects genuine healing. My relationship with Adam has evolved into something I never would have thought possible. After completing his treatment program, he committed fully to recovery, maintaining sobriety from gambling and building a simple but stable life. We speak regularly now, our conversations characterized by a mutual respect that was absent throughout our earlier lives. 6 months ago, Adam made the final payment to resolve the dangerous debts using his own earnings rather than borrowed funds. He marked the occasion by sending me a simple card that read, "Thank you for helping me find the right kind of help. I am learning from your example every day." My parents have faced the difficult reality of their financial situation, selling their too large house and moving to a small condo that better suits their reduced circumstances. My father has finally retired. His health improved once the stress of maintaining appearances was removed. My mother has returned to work part-time at a local boutique, finding unexpected satisfaction in contributing to their household income. Our relationship remains a work in progress. There are still moments when old patterns emerge, when my mother makes a comment that triggers memories of favoritism, or when my father slips into comparing my success to Adam's struggles. But these instances are now followed by recognition and often apologies, signs of genuine effort to change deeply ingrained behaviors. I have established limited, carefully boundaried relationships with all of them. We speak regularly, but not excessively. I visit Connecticut several times a year, but maintain my independent life in Chicago. Financial discussions are approached with transparency and respect, rather than manipulation or entitlement. Perhaps the most unexpected development has been my parents' gradual recognition of their mistakes as they face retirement difficulties. During a recent visit, my father actually asked for my professional advice about their financial planning, acknowledging my expertise in a way he never had before. "We should have listened to you years ago," he admitted as we reviewed their simplified budget. "You understood something about financial responsibility that took us much longer to learn." The experience of being cut off financially during college, which once felt like the greatest betrayal of my life, has strangely become the foundation of both my professional success and my personal resilience. The skills I developed out of desperate necessity became valuable assets, and the painful lessons about self-reliance became wisdom I could share with others. I have created a series of educational resources for young adults facing family financial manipulation, including a workshop called Financial Boundaries as Self-Care that has been adopted by several university counseling centers. Each time I present this material, I am reminded of how universal these struggles are, despite how isolating they feel when experienced personally. Through my client work and educational initiatives, I have developed a deeper understanding of the difference between genuine support and unhealthy enabling. I see how financial relationships in families often represent love, control freedom, and security, all intertwined in complex patterns that span generations. Most profoundly, I have come to appreciate that while blood connections create biological family, it is actions, respect, and mutual support that create true family bonds. My chosen family of friends in Chicago has expanded to include colleagues, clients who became friends, and new connections who share my values around honest communication and healthy boundaries. Last Christmas, for the first time, I hosted a chosen family holiday gathering in my apartment, instead of making the obligatory trip to Connecticut. The evening was filled with laughter, genuine connection, and none of the tension that had characterized family holidays throughout my life. As I looked around at the diverse group of people who had chosen to spend this time together, I realized that this too was a gift that had emerged from the painful journey of the past decade. If you have ever faced similar family financial conflicts, please know that establishing boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary for authentic relationships based on mutual respect, rather than obligation or manipulation. True support empowers rather than enables, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in harmful patterns, even when that refusal is labeled as uncaring. I would love to hear your thoughts and experiences with family financial dynamics. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? How did you navigate that challenging territory? Please share in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe if my story resonated with you. Your engagement helps this channel reach others who might be facing similar struggles and need to know they are not alone. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to boundaries, to building a life defined by my own values rather than others' expectations. However complicated your own family financial situation might be, remember that you deserve relationships based on respect, honesty, and genuine support, not manipulation, guilt, or conditional love disguised as financial help.